What are the elements of a contract?
There are 5 parts of element of a contract. They are sorry.
5 elements of a contract. Again, you will absolutely have to know this throughout this course on multiple tests. So you need to really ingrain in your mind now the 5 elements of a contract. First, what?
First,
Starts with O.
offer,
Offer. Second,
acceptance,
acceptance. Third, Mr. Calloway,
with consideration.
consideration. Fourth,
I don't remember.
Mr. Copeland, Ms. Green. Are you doing time? I'm sorry. Ms. Hall. Ms. Kayla Hall. You got the first 3. Finish it up for the last 2.
It's 8:25.
Thank you. Ms. Cindy Hall.
Legality,
Legality. What else?
contractual capacity.
Contractual capacity. All right. Awesome. Again, those are the elements of a contract. You should, every day you come to this classroom, you should, yes, every day you come to this classroom, that should be on the forefront of your mind. There can't be no business without a what? Without a contract. And there can be no contract without a what? Those 5 elements. So if you come into this classroom, that needs to be at the forefront of your mind. What is my purpose coming to this class? What am I even talking about? And what I'm talking about, at minimum, are the elements of a contract. Right? That's at minimum what you need to know when you come to this classroom. So now, let's dig deep into what we call consideration. Right? The book explains that consideration is usually defined as the value, such as cash, given in return for a promise in a bilateral contract, or in return for performance, right? Because we know that in unilateral contracts, the difference between a bilateral contract versus a unilateral contract, Mr. Tucker, is what?
What's that?
So the difference between a bilateral contract and a unilateral contract is what?
Bilateral contract is a promise for a promise, and a unilateral contract is a promise followed by act.
That's right. In exchange for performance. Exactly. And you went over that. Good job. That's the reason I thought that would be an easy one for you, Mr. Tucker, and you came through. So again, we said that again in a consideration, and the difference is, we'll stand back up. Let me ask you about that since we've been today's subject. Let me just give you credit for the last subject. So give me now what consideration is in a bilateral contract.
I promise. No, I will.
What's the consideration in a bilateral contract?
Consideration is the promise. It's like the incentive to do something.
Like such as what?
Like if I sell you this phone, you promise to give me $200.
Exactly. What's the consideration?
The money.
The money.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now tell me, what is the consideration in a unilateral contract?
Consideration is the act being done.
Exactly. The act being done, the consideration. So as long as consideration is present, the courts generally do not interfere with contracts based upon the amount of consideration. So it's up to the contracting parties to determine whether or not their bargain is worth it, right? Generally speaking, there are some exceptions. So again, no matter how well or how poorly baseball player, for example, Prince Felder performs, his $214 million contract with the Detroit Tigers, as you know, this is kind of an old book, but $214 million contract with the Detroit Tigers is enforceable during that 9-year period, no matter how poorly he performed. So again, the performance in that instance was the consideration for that contract. All right. So again, now often, however, consideration is broken down into 2 parts. What are the parts of consideration? Miss Hodge. There are 2 parts. Generally, must be 2 parts. Two parts of consideration. Miss Hodge. Oh, I'm sorry. You're taking it. I'm sorry. You're good. You're good, Miss Hodge. You're good. We're recording our video for today. You should know that anyway, nevertheless. Ms. King, what are the elements of consideration? To be legally sufficient, consideration must be what? Must be broken. They're broken down into 2 parts. What is the first one?
Legally sufficient value must be given in exchange for money.
1, something legally sufficient, right? And there's the 2 words that were there. Legally, no, 3 words. Legally sufficient value. We're going to dig into that. And, thank you. And the second was what?
There must be a bargain for exchange.
Bargain for exchange, right? Those are the 2 things. To be legally sufficient, there must be something given in value in the eyes of law. Something of legally sufficient value may consist of, what are some examples? Ms. King? Some examples of being legally sufficient. Pardon me? You don't know. Hold on, Miss. So that's
A promise to do something that one has no prior legal duty to do.
1, exactly. A promise to do something that you, had no prior legal ability to do. So again, if I say, well, Professor Karim, if I tell you that I will come to class. I'll come to class if you give me $100, right? If you agree to that, but then I come to class and you don't give me $100, what would be your defense, Ms. King? What's your defense to not giving me the $100? You didn't have it. No, not you don't have it. Your defense should be, Professor Karim, that contract is invalid. Because of what? Because of what? Because of what? Miss King?
The promise.
Huh?
The promise.
What promise? It's invalid, right? Based upon what you just said. What did you just say? It must be. The consideration must be. A promise to do something what?
It has a prior legal duty.
That you had no prior legal duty. However, do I have a prior legal duty to come to class?
Yeah.
Of course. I'm already contracted by the university to come to class, right? So I can't contract with you, right, to come to class. I mean, I can, but you have something that you can say in response. And you can say what? No, Professor Karim, you taught us that this contract is without consideration because you already have a duty to come to class, right? Okay, let's go to the second.
The performance of an action that one is otherwise not obligated to undertake.
The performance of an action that one is that is otherwise not obligated to undertake. So again, it's really, that one is almost saying do. So one is the promise to do something. So I can say, I promise to come to class, right, in a bilateral contract. The other is an actual unilateral contract, actually coming to class. You see what I mean? So that's a kind of a, again, similarity, but it's one is a bilateral, other is a unilateral context. The third one.
The refraining from an action that one has a legal right to undertake.
Okay, great. Now give me an example of this one. Give me an example. Refraining from an action. Where's my time? Who's my timekeeper? Come on now. Listen.
Would that be like you not coming to class?
Huh?
Would that be like you not coming to class?
Okay, in this context of the class, so that I'm refraining from an action that one has a legal right to undertake. So it's my right to do something. Let's say, for example, you want to help her out?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Stan.
I was gonna say like maybe you agreed to something, but you already had a prior engagement, a legal prior engagement, which wouldn't allow you to partake in the current contract you're supposed to be like.
So again, what are some of the rights that I have as a professor?
It's 8:35.
To teach.
Rights, that's my obligation. Well, my rights. There's hardly no rights that I have here as an adjunct professor, quite frankly. But what are the few rights that I have here?
To go in like the little teachers
Lounge, teachers lounge, yeah, absolutely. That's absolutely. So give me now, Ms. King, an example. What a forbearance? If I forbear, what was an example of me exercising forbearance?
Not going in the teacher's room?
In exchange for what? So, for example, if you, do you have Ms. Hodge? You got an example of that?
Maybe like I'm trying to think why you wouldn't be able to go in the teacher's lounge. Say
if you said, for me, Professor Karim, I tell you what, I'll pay you $100 to come to class, you know, instead of going to the teacher's lounge, right? If you would come spend some more time and give me some tutoring in let's say that. I'll give you $100, Professor Karim, if you don't go to I know how much you like the teacher's lounge. Because the other one was going to be an action. That'd be on top of it. You said, no, Professor Karim, I know how much you like going to the teacher's lounge. I'll give you $100 if you don't go to the teacher's lounge. Now, that would be an example of forbearance. I have a legal right to go to the professor's lounge, right? But she's going to pay me $100 if I give up that right. It would be another action, again, if I not only give up that right, but if I gave her that right. If I said, okay, you can go into the teacher's lounge, right? That would be something different. But here, forbearance is my action, not going to the teacher's lounge. That's forbearance. All right? Thank you, Ms. King. All right. So, again, we talked about the elements of consideration. The second element, so again, the first one being legal sufficient value. Talk to me about bargain for exchange. Bargain for exchange. Let's talk to Miss Murray. Miss Murray, give me an example of bargain for exchange. And what does that mean?
Like an example is you saying that I don't know.
You don't know? Okay. All right. Let's say Miss Murray, help her out. I'm sorry, Miss Murray, not Miss Murray, Mr. Ocean Roadboy, help her out. Excuse me. You don't know? Okay, if you don't know,
No.
just say don't know.
I don't know. I'm
All
trying to
right,
read
great.
it
Thank you. Let's go to Miss Samay. Bargain for exchange.
So it's saying that the value must be given or promised by the promiser in return for the promisee promise performance or promise of performance.
Okay, now give me an example.
Okay. Well, question, does it have to be like a performance or could it be?
Can be a promise, performance, or promise of performance.
Okay.
3 things.
An example would be, let's say.
Why don't you just give me an example of the book? See, we gotta be really. No. I'm serious about this. We don't have a limited amount of time, right? And you have to be wise. That doesn't mean working yourself, up, to kind of find some, things just because you want to prove that you're intelligent. No, you got to be smart. Smart is using the resources that are available to you. Right now, it's the example in the book. Please give it to me.
In consideration of the fact that you are not as wealthy as your brothers, I will pay you $5,000. The fact that the word consideration is used does not by itself mean that consideration has been given. Shangwi's promise is not enforceable because the son does not have to do anything in order to receive the $5,000 promise. Because the son does not need to give Shangwi something of legal value in return for his promise. There is no bargain for exchange. Rather, Shangwi has simply stated his motive for giving his son a gift.
Exactly.
Age 40.
Thank you. So again, the item of value must be given in return for what? 3 things. What? A promise, right? Performance. And a promise of performance. If you don't have those things, then there is no consideration. Like this case right here. The son had to do nothing. All he had to do is take his money, right? Had to do nothing. Again, that's what you want to look for in terms of consideration, all right? You guys can have a seat. Miss Samay, right?
Yeah.
All right. All right. So now let's turn to the question of adequacy of consideration. Mr. Thomas, tell me what is adequacy of consideration?
I don't know.
Thank you for telling me that you didn't know, although it's not acceptable. I appreciate you saving our time, but it's not acceptable. All right, Mr. Tucker, we already got your points. So go ahead. Let's go back around and see if those other people may have been diligent by just trying to get a book or reading, perhaps. Mr. Assad, help him out.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question one time, please?
Adequacy of consideration. What is it?
It involves how much consideration is given. Essentially, adequacy of consideration concerns the fairness of the bargain.
Okay, now give me what the general rule is.
The general rule is that a court will not question the adequacy of consideration based solely on comparative value of things exchanged.
In other words, what?
In other words,
Determination of whether consideration exists does not depend on a comparison of the values. Something need not be of direct economic or financial value to be considered legally sufficient. In many situations, the exchange of promises and potential benefits is deemed to be sufficient consideration. Under contract doctrine, freedom of contracts, courts leave it up to the party to decide what something is worth, and the parties are usually free to bargain as they wish, right? If people could sue merely because they had entered into a bad contract, the courts would be overloaded with frivolous suits, all right? However, when can voluntary consent be lacking, Mr. Hassan?
when there's a large disparity in the amount of value of the consideration exchanged. it may raise a red flag for the court to look more closely at the bargaining.
So, an example. Give me a quick example.
Quick example, for instance, an experienced appliance dealer induces a consumer to sign a contract written in complicated legal language. If the contract requires the consumer to pay twice the market value of the appliance, the disparity in value may indicate that the sale involved undue influence or fraud.
Excellent. Where did you get that?
From the book.
God, brilliant! He's brilliant! That's what I'm talking about! Again, don't have to, make things complicated. And he sounded so intelligent, like he just came up with it himself. Go ahead. Have a seat, sir. Have a seat. That's what we're talking about. People just use the resources. And again, if you don't, you have the book, sir? You don't have the book? What team were you on? What? What team number is that, brother? You don't know the team number. You got to at least know the team. You got to know your identity. Huh? The team A, B, C. What is it? Every team has an A, B, or C, or team A. Huh? Come on. Look at it. If you look at the groups, you get a group number. But my point is, look, you guys, if you come in, thank you. You come to class, everybody should have, again, the resource. And if you don't have it, the person in your team should be obligated to throw you a spitball or something to make sure that you have the information. Don't allow the team members to basically, be out there, dangling in the wind. If you got the information, right, you got the book, then your obligation is to make sure that the people in your study group, have the information. All right? And I'm going to also give you one other thing. Again, I'm going to offer you something that I'm not necessarily legally obligated to do, but I'm going to give it to you nevertheless, right? And that is, if I don't, if I don't send to you the outline, right, before class, you may text me and ask me for the outline, okay? That might also be some service to you, all right? So if I don't send you the contract, if I don't send you this outline within at least 24 hours after our 24 hours after our last class. So again, the class before the class is going to be over, because every chapter sometimes we go over 2 classes per chapter. So you want to make sure that within 24 hours of the last chapter that I send you the outline, okay? So you can have that for preparation, okay? But nevertheless, again, that's when consideration may be lacking. Now, let's go into this idea, agreements that lack consideration. Sometimes there are parties, either one of the parties or the other, to agreement may think that consideration has been exchanged when in fact it has not. Here are some situations. What are some situations when there is no consideration? Quickly, let's give to Miss Hall. Let's give you another chance. Miss Hall?
Yes, pre-existing duties.
Okay, now talk to me about that. Give me an example.
A promise to do what one already has a legal duty to do does not constitute legally sufficient consideration.
Exactly. Give me an example.
Ajax Contractors begins construction on a 7-story office building and after 3 months demands an extra $75,000 on his contract. If the extra $75,000 is not paid, the contractor will stop working. The owner of the land, finding no one else to complete the construction, agrees to pay the extra $75,000. The agreement is unenforceable because it is not supported by legally sufficient consideration. Ajax Contractors has a pre-existing contractual duty to complete the building.
This is an excellent example because if anybody has a house or even a car and you basically have a mechanic or you have a contractor, this is what's invariably going to come up. However, there are 2 exceptions to that. Give me the exception. 1, Ms. Hall. No, the exceptions to what you just talked about. If the contractor runs into what?
Unforeseen difficulties.
Unforeseen difficulties. And tell me about that, Ms. Hall.
It regards pre-existing duty is meant to prevent extortion and the so-called hold-up game. Nothing less, if during performance of a contract extraordinary difficulties arise, that performance of a contract extraordinary difficulties
were totally unforeseen at the time the contract was formed, a court may allow an exception to the rules.
Okay, so in an Ajax example, what could have happened? If they said that the $75,000 was due to what?
Unforeseen.
Like what? It's right there. It's right there.
A court may allow an exception to the rules.
Suppose that what?
Suppose that an example 13.3 Ajax contractors had asked for the extra $75,000 because it encountered a rock formation that no one knew existed.
Exactly. So if I'm in your house, where you live, Miss Hall?
Baltimore, Maryland.
So you live in Baltimore, and I'm working on your house, right? You say, Mr. Karim, I want you to repair my roof. Say, okay, cool. It's gonna be, $15,000 to repair your roof. And then, while I'm repairing your roof, I discovered there's asbestos on your roof, which is a cancerous causing material that requires, significant protection in order to abate or remove. Now, I have to call in some experts to actually go through that removal process, which will increase my removal cost by perhaps, tens of thousands of dollars, right? I can't be held to that same contract, right? Because you didn't tell me there was asbestos, right? You may not have known there was asbestos, all right? Thank you. All right, we'll finish it up. Hopefully we'll finish it up on Friday. See you guys on Wednesday, okay?